Okay, hello everyone. This is a podcast about Advent, which um I how did I even realize that started today? I think just on Instagram. But today, November 29th, 2020 is the first day of Advent, and I was like, "Drew, today's Advent." And what did you say, babe?
I'm a little embarrassed because I had no idea what Advent was. Um, Oddly enough,
It's okay though.
this
No
is
shame.
the this is the first time I've ever heard about Advent, but now I'm actually really interested because this could be a really deep subject that can bring a lot of fruit.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't exactly explain to you what it was. You were like, "What is that?" And I was like, "Well, actually, I don't know if if I remember enough to give you a clear definition." So, I actually Googled it, and I have like celebrated it, I guess is the word you could say, only once, and it was, I think, if not last Christmas, the Christmas before. Kind of like when I first became a Christian, I realized what it was. Um, but I'll just read this from Christianity.com, and it's just a little bit about what Advent is. But it lasts for 4 Sundays leading up to Christmas. And um, Advent symbolizes the present situation of the church in these quote unquote last days, which is from Acts 2:17 and Hebrews 1 verse 2, as God's people wait for the return of Christ and glory to consummate his eternal kingdom. So there's a lot more, but basically Advent is the celebration of Christ's first coming, which is when he was born of a virgin. And then we celebrate that, but then we also, it's like our reminder that he is coming again. And we're in this yes, but not yet type situation. That's what it was kind of mentioning about the last days. Like, Christ came to complete us, but it hasn't fully reached completion yet. So, I don't know. Should I explain more? Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, so basically Advent is a season of waiting, and we're waiting for Christmas, and basically there's going to be a, a devotional method to actively wait for Christmas.
Yeah, it's like a time where you can really focus on what it means to wait actively. Because all throughout the year, I mean, of course, every day, like, we're waiting for Christ to come back, but we're not always thinking about that. We should be. We should be living our lives like in this constant awareness that Christ is coming back. And so how am I going to like follow him until that happens? So, there's another little definition that I just Googled, what is Advent? And it tells you the dates when it starts and when it ends. So it starts Sunday, November 29th, which is today, through Thursday, December 24th. So the day before Christmas. But it says Advent is a season of the liturgical year observed in most Christian denominations as a time of expectant waiting and preparation for both the celebration of the nativity of Christ at Christmas and the return of Christ at the second coming. So, we have a really close friend. Her name is Rebecca, and she lives in Colorado, and I forget where she went to school, but she actually majored in English and like writing. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, she's like a really good writer. So she's very poetic in how she writes.
The blasted ringtones.
Yeah. Let me put that on silent. So she uploaded a picture of, it's like completely snowing in Colorado right now. And like look at these trees. They're completely white. So basically the only two colors in this post are
Blue and white. Bless you.
are just blue and white. So the trees are completely frosted and there's snow on the ground, and then there's just the blue sky. But Rebecca is talking about Advent in a very poetic way. So bear with us, because I think this could also help in what Advent is. But she says, if you look closely, you can see bright sparkles of falling ice, glittering light. Today we begin Advent season. If you look closely, you can perceive hope sparkling, glittering amidst the landscape of sickness, separation, and fear. At the end of Isaiah 64:5, a question bursts out of desperation. And shall we be saved? God's entrance onto the scene of the earth as Emmanuel answered this question. And yet we also await the fulfillment of the answer, thus finding aspects of ourselves and our world still in desperate wondering. During Advent, we hold the remembrance of the yes, which has already come, and the expectation of the completion for which we long. So Jesus came, so that was God's answer, yes, I'm coming to save you. And there's been lots happening in the church ever since Jesus died and rose again and then ascended into heaven. He gave us a commission, the whole church, and a lot has been happening while he's been in heaven. But he's going to come back, and that'll be like the completion that we long for.
That's his second coming.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So right now, the Advent season that we're in is kind of having a season of waiting for his first coming, since we're celebrating Christmas, right? Because
I think it's more of not of a waiting of his first coming, it's a remembrance.
So what should be done on a daily or weekly basis in your mind that would be practicing Advent?
I think that there are a few things that you could do, and we just watched that YouTube video. You should reference that.
Yeah, there was a guy, I'll have to reference it at some point. I can look it up again here in just a second, but there was this pastor that did a quick YouTube video on what Advent means, and the way that he explained it, it was pretty cool. He was talking about how, obviously when we wait on Christmas, we're waiting for Jesus to come to us and to be born here on earth. But then what he also references is that, whether we're waiting on Jesus to come to us or for us to go to him, so when we pass away, basically it's Advent should be a season of preparing to meet Jesus. Mm-hmm. So if you take a look at your life right now, you take a look at your spiritual walk, or, just what you're doing with your life, period, and you ask yourself, am I preparing to meet Jesus? Mm-hmm. Or am I just living my life, period?
Yeah, have I just kind of succumbed to the culture around me, which is a very strong influence. And if you're not aware that the culture outside of you is influencing your ideologies and your philosophies, then you're just going to go with it.
Yeah, so a great question for you to ask yourself is, okay, if I pretend like I know I'm going to meet Jesus face to face on December 25th, am I living my life like that right now?
Yeah.
And if not, then, the beautiful thing about making this season of Advent, in my mind, magical, is we get to ask that question. We get to look at our life pretty deeply, and we have the freedom to, explore what it means to make that adjustment.
Yeah.
So, literally this week we've been talking again. We're over a month into marriage, and, we're already kind of asking ourselves okay, how are we living for the Lord? Mm-hmm. Are we getting involved with something? Are we locking arms with a community? Are we going to start up a Bible study here soon? We're doing a devotional pretty regularly. We're praying with each other regularly, and that's us. But then there's also the community aspect that you've said is a real desire on your heart. So, are we asking ourselves the question, what are we going to do about that? This season of Advent, we get to ask ourselves all these questions on how are we living our life preparing to meet Jesus?
Yeah. And I think to answer your question also, babe, is what are things that you can do practically mm-hmm. to walk through a season of Advent, there are devotions and like devotionals that they have where it's like every day is kind of a new concept to think about. It's kind of like a Jesus Calling devotional, but it's Advent focused. So there's that. And I actually saw a link on Christianity.com, like where I read like, what is Advent? There's a link on that site that will lead you to devotions and like prayers, like daily prayers that you can pray. So those are two things. Or if you want to do your own study and just kind of like read the first chapters of Luke in the New Testament when Jesus was born and like his life, and maybe like I don't know these off the top of my head, but maybe some prophecies about like when Jesus was first coming.
I saw in a couple of reference scriptures, like Isaiah had a lot of verses on Advent of like Jesus is coming, like how we're to wait on this and stuff, and like how to prepare yourself. And then I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. So I know that there are some resources out there that could help you with, like, I still don't really know like what Advent really is about, and like I couldn't get the fullness out of it myself right now. So I would probably choose like some type of devotional. But it is like a really good time to reflect on. This will help you reflect on what Christmas is really about, and not just like, boom, December 25th, Jesus is born. Let's just think about that. And then the next day it's over. It's kind of like you're leading up to it, and you're preparing yourself not only by decorating the house and buying Christmas gifts and all that stuff. You're spending time with God every day by yourself, or with a loved one, but you should spend time with God yourself. Like, he has so much to tell you and I individually, you know, and then we can come together and like, what did God tell you? I don't know. This is what God's telling me. What's he telling you? And so I think, yeah, like
it also feels like that, since this is a season that is dedicated to Advent, then it's like you get to play out this scenario every day where, what does it look like to live like you're about to meet Jesus on December 25th? All of a sudden that makes you feel and think like maybe the problems or the things that I'm chasing in this world aren't actually as big as they seem. You know, a lot of people, it's good to make 5-year and 10-year goals. You know, it's good to have plans. It's good to have passions and dreams and desires and things that you want to do. But then to put it in perspective of thinking about like, okay, there is actually only one important thing that is really going to happen. And it'll either happen December 25th or it'll happen when I die, but I'm going to meet Jesus. What do all these things surrounding that, like, what really is their significance? And is it worth me kind of getting, you know, like all riled up over? Is it worth me losing my patience over? Is it worth me sweating over as much as I do, you know? So I think it's like if you have a grudge against a friend or a family member, and every holiday season, it's kind of this thing where you just kind of don't make eye contact or avoid them. But then you think about it in perspective of like, okay, I'm going to meet Jesus on December 25th. Do I really want this? Do I want this splinter like lingering here? Am I really not going to take care of this? Like, is it worth this much pain and trouble? And am I going to look at, you know, Jesus at the end of this and say like, well, I mean, it was just kind of too hard to get around? Or is it like, can this be the season where we start, you know, getting our affairs in order?
Yeah, I think it helps us live in a time of urgency, like how we always should be. Like every day should be like church. It shouldn't be just every Sunday. Every day should be, we are living for the Lord, and today is a day the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice in it. Like, be thankful, worship, pray, let God lead you and guide you every day. Like, you have your plans, but like, what if God has different plans for you in that day? Like, maybe, yes, think about the big picture. Like, what does God want to do with my life? Big picture focus, but also every day. And I think Advent has, it gives you a good opportunity to really do that, because it's not very long. But
we got some questions, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, let's like transition into questions. So Drew and I are gonna ask each other some questions and just bounce back and forth and make it, I don't know, pretty quick, I guess. Just, I mean, answer however your heart desires. But
yeah, and you guys and for those of you at home listening and stuff, if like after she asks a question, if you want to hit the pause button and just kind of answer that question for yourself, take some time to do that. Make a note on it, or like journal about it or something, and just, maybe possibly make that a goal for this season of Advent.
Yeah. Or maybe if like a question with you lingers more so than other questions, maybe that's one that the Lord really does want you to ponder.
And ask your friends and family too. Compare and contrast and just see what everybody's perspective is.
Yeah, exactly. And like, if the Lord's inviting you into celebrating Advent every day, absolutely invite your friends and family to do the same. Mm-hmm. Because a lot can happen a lot of change can happen in your lives personally if you just kind of think more deeply about the Lord in a more focused way, and then like apply those things that he's teaching you and he's guiding you to ponder. So, okay. First question. I'll ask you and then you can ask me.
Okay.
Have you ever celebrated Advent?
No. What about you?
I think just like I said, it was like when I first became a Christian, and I had a church bulletin that had Advent in it. So that's another thing, like another resource is like go to a local church and they will probably have like a little Advent bulletin, and it'll have every day like a little devotion that you can do and things that you can pray through. So I'm pretty positive Southeast would have one. Because Kyle Idleman, the lead pastor, he writes things all the time. Mm-hmm. And I know that he wrote like a little book for Easter. So I'm sure he's written one for Advent.
Yeah.
So that always helps me. So I honestly think I've only really done it one year. And it might have been in like 2015.
Nice. What's the next question?
Next question. This one was one that you came up with, which I love. What is one way during the pandemic you want to experience Advent the most?
So, for one, this Thanksgiving was brutal because we didn't get to celebrate it with family. Mm-hmm. COVID ended up separating a lot of different sections of my family because some people were either sick or had just been sick. And we just couldn't risk it. And so that really sucked. We had to Zoom and kind of FaceTime and check in with everybody. But it was just you, me, and my sister having dinner together. Mm-hmm. That took a lot of the magic of the holidays away, because getting together with family, especially family that you love, is like one of the best parts of the year, So this season of Advent, what I hope to get out of it is honestly a deeper understanding of like, what am I truly waiting for? I'm excited to hopefully see my family for Christmas and everything, to see my cousins and my aunts and uncles and everybody that I love,
Yeah.
But am I truly excited and having a deep sense of like just gratitude on waiting to celebrate the birth of Jesus,
Yeah.
Like waiting to celebrate the thing that gives me peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said this before. I say it as a joke all the time. Like when I was a kid and I figured out Santa wasn't real,
Yeah.
all the magic in Christmas was kind of gone.
Yeah.
You know, because
I know what you mean.
there wasn't like this mysterious.
Yeah. No more
thing
looking at the
happening.
moon on Christmas Eve, hoping to
Right.
see Santa's sleigh.
I wasn't looking for some magical person, but now, like, this could really like restore the magic of Christmas for me, because it's like waiting in the cold, dark night for the greatest thing to ever happen to us to like happen. And all month long, on the cold, snowy days, when I wake up at 5:30 in the morning before the sun comes up, or I come home from work after the sun has gone down and it's cold and it's dark, I get to sit and ponder the fact that like in this deep darkness, like a light is going to be born into this world. And am I remembering that in my heart? Am I remembering that in my mind? And am I able to kind of have this joy and peace that I carry with me throughout the day to kind of have that? And I hope to get a deeper rooted understanding of that. And I think even if I do, like, if we do have the privilege to get together with all of our family members for Christmas, I think it'll bring us all that much closer.
Yeah.
Just to be able to sit around all in a living room together, there's like 30 of us, and to have like this deep spiritual reverence that we are, like, whether we're in each other's presence or not, like we're so blessed, you know?
Yeah.
So
I just like went into a trance when you were talking, because I was like envisioning, I don't know, what you just said was very like beautiful and eloquent, and I just went into this like vision of just like the Lord, like all the what is it, the 3 wise men and the drummer boy and like all the
Right.
people, like
everyone who was in the shepherds in the field,
yeah, like they
how it
knew
was
he
dark.
was coming, and they were walking outside and like spoiler alert, Jesus was probably not born in December.
Right.
So it might have been cold, it might have not been cold, but still they had this longing, this deep longing in their heart for the light of the world, and they believed like God's promise, and they knew with faith that the North Star would lead them to Jesus. Like everything is just so cool. Like they actively were waiting, and then they knew, because they were actively waiting, they knew where to find him. And I think that's really cool, and I think that still applies, is like when we actively wait and wait patiently on the Lord, we'll find him.
And this is cool too. Think about how in scripture says the first coming of Jesus, he came like a thief in the night.
Oh yeah.
And like the second time he'll come like on a cloud with trumpets, right?
Yeah.
But like the wise men, they didn't even reach Jesus till he was 2. So
Oh really?
this Christmas story lasts for 2 years essentially.
Oh.
But the wise men even came to him in secret because Herod wanted Jesus dead.
Yeah.
The prophecy had gone around and like word had gotten out, sort of this thing. And
Oh
it
yeah,
was,
and he had all the boys 2 years and under killed.
yeah. So it was like whispers of a king being born that was going, like in Israel, that was going to, you know, be the King of Kings. And
Oh my
so
gosh, that makes me want to cry.
yeah, it intimidated Herod. And
Yeah.
so he desperately searched for him, but it was quiet. And he came like a thief in the night. And so these shepherds, these wise men, these people who like witnessed at first, right? They were so quiet about it. And then Jesus didn't really land on the scene till, you know, he was a lot older. Even after he was 12 and he had impressed all the people at the synagogue with his knowledge of scripture, like that was the only other instance in Jesus' youth where he was standing out, until he finally turned water into wine. You know, that was his first miracle.
Yeah.
But it's like, it probably seems more relevant to me than it ever has in my life, because the pandemic, the social fabric of our nation, the economy, all of this is like, people are like batten down the hatches. It's quiet. People are isolated. People are kind of on edge a little bit, and we have this reminder that, like a thief in the night, the Savior of the world came, and we all get to have a moment where the noise just goes away, and we sit like we're sitting around like a campfire or something, and we just look.
Yeah.
It's really, that's something that I like want to deeply immerse myself into this season.
That's cool. Honestly, I don't know how to answer that question, so I'm going to skip to the next one.
Go for it.
What's one thing you want to do for Advent this year that you've never done for Advent before? Was that the question?
No. The first one was, what do you hope to get out of it? So then what's one thing do you want to do for it in particular?
Okay, so what do you want to get out of it? And then this one's, what do you want to do for Advent?
I've never done a devotional for Advent, so I'd like to do that, but I'd like for it to be kind of a deeper, richer history of what it looked like in those times. So Luke chapter 2 was saying, in those days Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken over the entire Roman world. And, basically that sets up the stage for Jesus. Everybody's returning home. Everyone's going to their original town they were born in so they can register for the population. I'd like to know more about that culture. I'd like to know more about, because Caesar Augustus was the Roman emperor. Rome had invaded Israel. Israel was under Roman occupation, so there was basically adversity happening.
Yeah.
Like rule from a foreign government was occurring, and that was unnerving. Nobody wanted that. So, like, what was the social fabric like? What would it have been like for Mary to really tell Joseph that she's having a baby, and it's the Son of God?
Yeah.
Like, think about, like, we obviously, like, people will say crazy things on social media, right? But we don't take it super seriously. But back in a time where you could be killed for having adultery, for committing adultery, you have the audacity not only to tell your engaged fiance that you're pregnant.
Your engaged fiance.
Yeah, engaged fiance. But
Oxymoron. I'm just kidding.
But not only do you have the audacity to tell your fiance that you are pregnant, but you're also going to tell him that it's God's baby. What must have been the fear? What must have been the uncertainty? What was she thinking as a teenage girl that this man was going to do?
Yeah.
And then what must have it been like for Joseph, who, like, after the fact decided he was going to divorce her quietly? Like, what kind of honor did that man have? What was his thought process,
Yeah.
So just to get a real deeper historical understanding of everything that was going on back then, the context, I'd like to do that this season.
Well, we can probably find one.
I bet we could.
Yeah. Or we could ask, like, some friends. I'm sure, like, some of our pastor friends would, like, say, hey, here's some, like, good passages to study for Advent. But
I'll tell you who could tell you a lot about this is Cameron.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just for context, my cousin Cameron studies at Southern Seminary, and some of the knowledge that he has will melt the hair off your head if you ever do a Bible study with him. It's ridiculous.
Sweet.
Also, excuse me, I'm coughing a lot, I know, and it's not COVID, I promise. I just have kind of a scratchy throat.
Okay. Yeah, pray for me, please.
What about you, babe? What do you want to do for Advent?
I would say like like, yeah, I'm interested always in the context and the history, but I'm more interested in what that means for me now. So in order for me to understand what that means for me now, you have to go back and look at the history of what it meant then. So, but I really just want, I just want to like try to find like some devotional or something that some church has posted where I can individually like look into my own heart and figure out where I'm at, because like, yes, we're married, but we are on two totally different paths with the Lord. Like, we have different callings or different passions and desires, maybe not different callings. Like, that's why I kind of married you. It's because we have similar callings. But yeah, just something like that.
Cool.
Okay, last question. What's one thing you want to accomplish with Advent this year? Can I answer first?
Yeah.
And then you think about it?
Yeah.
I hope to just get a revelation within myself of something that I might not be doing well, or something that I could be doing better when it comes to following the Lord. Don't do it. Cracks open a cold one on a podcast. Nice.
A cold iced coffee.
Yeah. Yeah, just, I hope that I can take away something from this Advent season that, I mean, maybe not even something that I'm not doing well enough, or maybe something that I haven't noticed, but like, I guess deep change. Because I think that every time you really dive into time with the Lord and relationship with the Lord, you're going to walk out a little different. And that's just what his presence does, is like, he invites you into a deeper love, which changes you. Mm-hmm. And so whether that's like, he says, sin no more, or, yeah. So I hope to just kind of like really hear him speak in a specific area in my life, that I could really walk with him in a more profound way. Yeah.
I'm kind of right there with you, actually. Like, now that you mention it, I feel like too often on a day-to-day basis, I'm thinking about all the things I need to get done, or the things that I'm wanting to do or prepare for, and it's just none of it like God is in the conversation, And not that I'm not keeping that in mind, but it's like I'm literally not having that conversation out loud with him. And I'm not like, Lord, what should be done about our finances, or what should be done about our future plans? I'm thinking about, okay, what do I know? What do I know that we need to do? And what do I don't know? And what should I figure out? It's not like, why am I not asking the Lord those questions? I do when I go on walks, right? And I take that time to think, but not in the moment when I'm at my job, or I'm on the computer, or we're having a conversation. I usually just refer to what I know and my own understanding, even though I've sought out that understanding from the Lord, but he's still not a part of the conversation as much as I'd like for him to be. So it's like, I'd hope to accomplish more of a mindfulness of God's presence in our conversations.
Yeah. Just like practice inviting the Holy Spirit more.
Just like, well, yeah. And it's like, just like right now, like, to imagine, like, if the Holy Spirit had a microphone, was on this podcast with us, what input would be given right now? What would the Holy Spirit want all of us to know? Yeah. To say like, hey, like, this is something that I really want you guys to be able to have this season. I want to walk with you guys in this season,
And something you said reminded me of the really important truth that we can't live off of things that we've learned in the past, because God always wants to show us a new thing. And like we also can't always live off of what our pastors tell us. God wants to meet us in the word individually, like one-on-one. He wants to reveal himself to us because he wants that intimacy with you. And so we can't, I'm like kind of getting emotional because we can't just resort to sitting in pews and being like fed all of this like information, trusting that like our pastor's done the work. He knows this more than I do. I'm just going to accept it and receive it. Like, it's a beautiful thing to sit and receive truth and like apply that to your life, but it's also a beautiful thing to pick up your own study, and that's what pastors would want. Like, I think pastors would want you to know how to read the word, and that's why they try to instill that in you, is like, we're not just here to just feed you every Sunday. Like, we want to also equip you in what it looks like to seek the word yourself and understand. But what you were saying, Drew, like I have sought understanding from the Lord, which is where that comes from. But if that happened, let's say 2 weeks ago, and you're still going off of that thing that you learned 2 weeks ago, that could be kind of irrelevant today.
Right.
And God is so hungry. He's a jealous God. He's hungry for your attention. And he doesn't need your attention. He just wants it. Just like when parents have a child, they don't need the attention of that baby, but they want it because they love that child. So God isn't going to just set you up like one time you have a devotional with him. He's not going to set you up for a year and be like, all right, I'll talk to you at the end of the year. This should be enough information for you. I'll see you later.
Right.
He'll give you just enough so that you can stay dependent on him.
Yeah.
So I felt the need to say that because that reminded me of that and how important it is to seek God on your own and just create intimate, sacred, personal times with God. Even if you don't experience or feel anything ever.
Yeah.
They matter. And you're like building up a wealth of like holiness in your bank of heaven. I don't know.
You know, it's like, it's kind of weird that you say that, because it makes me think of this, and I'm just saying this, and I don't know how accurate this is or not, but like, imagine getting the question, like you ask somebody, if you're wanting to ask them, like, how is their relationship with the Lord going? But you don't ask that question. You say, hey, what have you learned about God and how he is in relationships? And it's almost like that would almost be more of an accurate question to ask if you are never diving into the word.
Yeah.
Or if you're never praying.
Because it's like impersonal.
Right. So it's like if I only ever learned about Jesus through sermons and through podcasts and devotionals without reading scripture or going and praying, I only know what God is like in a relationship. I'm not telling you what my relationship with God is like.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I guess during the season of Advent, explore what your relationship with God looks like. And it's almost like there are no wrong answers.
Yeah.
There's just simply where you're at right now. So if you feel distant or if you don't understand, that's not a problem. And I guess the one thing I want to communicate to young Christians or Christians period is one thing I struggled with a lot was the people who I saw had the strongest relationships with God, had this kind of carefree, happy, everything is just a blessing type sort of personality. And it kind of made me struggle in my relationship with God because I was like, I'm never going to act that way.
Yeah.
I'm never going to have that carefree attitude or something like that. I'm always going to be like, okay, well, this thing this week kind of sucks a little bit. I'm working through it, but you know, and it's gotten better, but it stifled me for the longest time. And it made me feel like if I'm not showing fruit like that to people, then my relationship with God sucks. And
Yeah.
that's bad.
Yeah.
It's not bad
Yeah.
when your relationship with God is a storm.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that God's doing something bad to you. It's just you're in a storm.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Just say it.
Yeah.
You know, be real enough with your community or your family or yourself to say,
And the Lord. Don't
Yeah.
be afraid of the Lord.
exactly, to say like, I'm not happy. That is perfectly acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
There have been times in the most joyous and peaceful seasons where I've been able to say, I'm totally not happy. Like, I'm sad,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm confused,
Yeah.
or I'm afraid.
Yeah.
And if people are real enough to like be able to admit those things,
Mm-hmm.
and then decide that they're not going to ask people or like look at what God is like in relationships according to other people, but go and have a relationship themselves, it'll turn around and deeper understanding will come, and from that fruits of joy and peace will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
No, I think what you're saying.
give me just a second. You can keep talking, babe. I'm going to check on the camera real quick.
So is it still recording?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I think what you're saying is really valuable because I just feel like, I don't know, our conversation has totally taken a turn in like a really good direction, and I feel like the Lord's totally guiding this. But one thing that made me think of was we're afraid to really confront God and how we actually feel about him because one, we're not really good with communication, and two, the only things we're really used to are human beings. And when we say to a human being, you know, I don't really know where I'm at with you right now, I feel like you're kind of mad at me because these things have happened, like these circumstances have happened, and you seem like you're a little withdrawn, and that can make a person really afraid and really hurt. Like, why did you withdraw from me? That people do that. When they get upset, they withdraw. Not everyone, but like, that's a really hurtful thing when someone does that. And so if that's kind of like ingrained in us, we kind of automatically assume that's what God does. That when we are upset, or if we're not really sure what's going on, we feel like God, we don't think our circumstances really match God's character. We're like, well, I thought God was good. Why is this stuff happening to me? We think
Right.
God's doing something to withdraw from us or punish us.
Right.
And I thought of Adam and Eve in the garden. When they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden, they hid. After they sinned, they hid. They were not able to confront God because they had shame about what they had done, and they were afraid, and they didn't know his love, so they hid from him. They thought Adam and Eve were the first ones to actually withdraw. God has actually never withdrawn. He's done things that have changed and altered the course of history, like the flood.
Right.
But I mean, we have a promise now that says nothing can separate us from the love of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a promise that we can cling to, that God does not withdraw from us. He always has love for us. But it is so worthwhile to ask yourself in this Advent season, where am I at with God? Am I afraid to come to him? Is there a lot of junk in my mind? Am I stressed out and therefore I haven't come to him because I'm too overwhelmed? Like, where am I really at? Because that's the most important relationship that you have. So work on that. I'm actually, to be vulnerable, I'm in a season of like figuring that out. And I've told you, Drew, all the time, like, I just feel like, I don't even know. What have I said? Like,
Well, sometimes you'll come to me and it will be a reflection of circumstances or your immediate feelings, and you'll have these questions on like, what is the Lord doing?
yeah,
Like I don't feel and I don't see how this is like the Lord's path, you know?
yeah,
And then it's like, to me, like what I'm receiving is like there's and not in a sinful way, but it's like it's easy to forget the Lord's sovereignty, like in our lives, and like and his plan for you. And it's just like when things don't feel good, obviously your natural instinct is like something's wrong.
Yeah.
So how do I
Like
figure it
God
out?
has withdrawn from me because I've sinned or I've done something wrong, and I think what I've really struggled with is like marrying you has changed so much about my life. Like I'm no longer in full-time ministry, which can really make a person feel like they're living great. Like, oh, I'm living my life for Jesus, like 100%. Like I'm doing the right thing for the Lord, and being so connected to that community too. And then going and being with you, and we're not really super connected to a community like that. Like we're in the process of trying to plant ourselves in a community, but everything's hard right now because like I don't have a job and we are scrapping quarters like every day, and my life's just so different. Like it's a very happy, joyous time. But just like we mentioned in the podcast before this and Shell Shocked, it's really hard because it's like you kind of question your identity a little bit. Like, okay, everything that kind of made me feel like I'm really doing well with the Lord, I don't have anymore. And I don't feel like I'm doing well with Jesus anymore. Like, I struggle now to like spend quiet times with him. Like I have to freaking fight myself to like do it. And I used to just like, before I was even in ministry, like before anything, I started really having quiet times with Jesus when I was in high school. And that wasn't even, I didn't know that that was a quiet time. I just craved spending time with him. That started in high school, and I would just talk to him, and I just felt so fulfilled at the end of it. And now I don't really. Like, I'll try to journal, but it doesn't land in the same way.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to figure out because I'm like, is it me? Am I doing something that I'm not supposed to be doing? Like, the temptation is that, like, to not go to God out of fear that you're doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. And you're afraid that God's going to point out all the stuff that you're going to do wrong. And it's like a mistake you can never undo or something.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to figure out where God is in the midst of this new life. And it's like, so I just never thought that I would be here, because you think like when you get married, your life will be like 3 times as better. So you'll have your solid foundation with the Lord. You'll have your quiet times. You'll have everything. But it's almost like an erasing and a rewriting of who you are.
Yeah.
It's not like your identity is always the same, but that's what it feels like, because everything freaking changes. You're in a new place, new family member, new family members that you bring, and new routine, and a new like financial source, which is not as plentiful.
Yep.
It's kind of stressful.
I feel that.
It's just everything's different, and it's like, okay, I'm trying to tell myself it's okay, but I can't shake the feeling that like I did something wrong and I'm in the wrong spot because of all this.
Yeah.
And it sucks.
Yeah.
That was my vulnerability.
I wonder how many people relate to that.
I hope. If you relate to me, please shout out, because I feel like I'm on my own little island of marriage that no one else has experienced anything like this before.
I think, I mean, I'm right there with you. I'm just handling it differently because it might just be like as a man, or it might be my mentality, but this is again where I'm not bringing the Lord into the conversation like I need to. I think about what I've learned from the Lord, or what I've been taught, or what I need to figure out, but I'm not having the conversation. And
and that's just, let me say this really quick. That's where you and I are so different because like a lot of times I don't remember what I've been taught and what I know. Like eventually I'll get there because a lot of times I don't feel connected to God at all. And I'll be like, okay, well, what do I know?
Yeah.
And you are so much on the other end where like, okay, what do I know? And then you skip the whole conversation part.
Right.
When I want to immediately dive into conversation, but then when I don't feel like God is there, I leave out what I've been taught and what I know.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's like with the roadmap and the navigation tools that I have, when we come up on a problem or we come up on a situation or a question that we have, I'm like, oh, I know what this is. And then I've got a mindset where I'm like, okay, well, it's probably going to be this hard or this easy or this is just what to expect, right? But then sometimes it doesn't always mull over smoothly, you know? Finances has been like, I knew it would be difficult, but it's like I didn't know how many conversations we were going to have over it, you know? And finances is finances. You're always going to have conversations over money. But it's like getting something down where we're both like, this is it. This is the move we're making here. This is what we got to do, so on and so forth. We're still literally putting pieces together as we go.
Yeah.
And that's okay, but it's still like, oh man, it's just like, it'll be frustrating. And it's like, if we just had $1,000 more a month, this wouldn't be, you know, as complicated to figure out. But it's like we're crunching numbers.
Yeah.
And we're crunching numbers from two different perspectives. On like, what's a necessity? What's not a necessity? What do we need to save for? What do we need to spend money on? We've got two different, we see needs differently. We have different definitions of needs. We have
like,
different
I
definitions
need new
of
pants.
wants. Yeah. And I need you to give me your wallet. But yeah, it, you know, when you are having conversations and you're problem solving with someone that is the closest person in the world to you, with it when it's your wife or your husband, and you just have to walk through a lot more than you thought you did. It's so easy for the enemy to creep up in you and to just make you think something's wrong, because it shouldn't be this hard. You know, I shouldn't be this confused. What did I do wrong? I shouldn't feel this lost. Did I lose the path? Is God approving of what I'm doing? If it's this hard, is God on my side? Because if God is my protector and my shepherd and my teacher, then I should be able to overcome anything. But now I'm not overcoming this. I've had 60 conversations about this one thing, and we keep going around in circles. What's the issue? Did I do something? You know, was it something that I said? Was it something that I chose? And it's like, I mean, if you're left to your own resources and you're not locking arms with a community that you can like constantly be in touch with, if you don't have mentors, you're setting yourself up for a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about this pandemic accomplishing that in a lot of situations.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I mean, not having Thanksgiving with my family, I'll say it again, has been more and more painful every day that's gone by, because I don't have it and I can't have it, and I took it completely for granted. And that was where I could talk to my mom or dad about something, my grandfather about something. You know, I look up to him a lot because he was a general in the Army and he knows everything, right? So I can always just like, so what'd you do here? You know, what is it? And we just talk about things. I didn't get to have a conversation. And it was taken away, and there was a sense of lostness. So, yeah, it was hard. I can see you're crying, babe. Are you okay?
Yeah, I think it's just hitting me how difficult this season has been.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't really cried over COVID until now.
It freaking sucks.
Yeah. Just, like, when it first hit, I was in YWAM, so I still had that community, even though we were really restricted. Like, we were all kind of ripped apart in a way. We all knew each other's whereabouts, and like we still stayed connected online and like Zoom and stuff, but oh my gosh, COVID has just isolated so much. Like, it's just been so hard, and I think I'm just realizing it, but I've had Thanksgivings before where it was literally me and 2 other people, and so I never took for granted the big family Thanksgivings, but I guess it kind of sucked, like, the first Thanksgiving, like, that we were married.
Yeah.
And just being stuck in the apartment. Like, I loved that Gracie could be there, but we were all just like so gloomy the entire day.
Yeah.
You know, like,
We didn't even have turkey till later.
yeah, we were gonna go pick it up, and we couldn't pick it up until the evening.
You just cooked a bunch of sides, basically, which
Yeah.
were all delicious, by the way.
Thanks. I don't know. COVID's taken a lot from us. And I'm not saying you and I'm saying like...
People have lost more than us during COVID as well.
Yeah, like... Yeah. And maybe I also am just crying because maybe I'm just realizing like the weight of other people and how they feel right now. Like our listeners, like maybe they've lost a family member or 2, or just their job. Like that's another thing. Like I don't have a job kind of because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
a lot of people have lost income.
Yeah, it's just like it's taken so much. And so just to bring it back around to Advent, what does that mean in this Advent season as you're waiting? And a thought I had earlier that I don't want to forget to say is that waiting is not supposed to be this like easygoing, peaceful thing. Like we do live in the yes, but not yet. And that sometimes is a very hard, grueling place to be. It's sometimes waiting for Jesus is not like, man, life's good, but I can't wait till Jesus comes back. Sometimes it's like my soul within me is just anguished to the point of death, and I just want you to come back. Like sometimes people, they just don't have good lives, they feel like, and they just, waiting for them means something entirely different for someone who has a lot of money and who has family around them. And
yeah,
so if waiting for you means grief and a realization of how desperate and full of fear our world is, then that's just as valid as anything else, if not more.
Yeah.
It's kind of depressing.
Well, I mean, you can look at it as a total and brutal loss, or we can all lock arms together, maybe not physically, but you know, spiritually and in prayer, and like, you know, we can connect through social media and FaceTime calls and all ask ourselves the question, like, maybe we need to recalibrate like what we value most. We need to ask ourselves that question again, because the pandemic at the beginning took away, you know, like
Freedom.
like restaurant privileges.
Yeah.
You know, it took away restaurant privileges. It took away, you know, the capacity of how full a building gets, blah, blah, blah. But then it took away jobs. And then it took away family members. And then it took away school, where kids, like one of the kids you were babysitting, James, he was really upset, even though he wasn't fully understanding it, that he wasn't able to be with friends. He wasn't able to be with other kids and socialize. He wasn't out there. He couldn't. Then the pandemic took away holidays, where that is the difference maker.
Yeah, that's like everyone's now they're like, okay, now it's personal.
Well, I mean, it's obviously tragic to lose family members, right?
Yeah.
It's obviously tragic to lose friends to an illness. But it's like, whether you are directly affected by COVID or not, the holidays is supposed to be this 1 month after the other, we're celebrating something where we make it a point to, like, whether it's Halloween, you know, we kind of have a fun party and get together and, you know, blah, blah, blah. Thanksgiving, we gather around the table as winter approaches and we make a giant meal and talk about what we're thankful for. Christmas, we celebrate Jesus. We celebrate the ultimate gift. And it's like, if you've had a bad year, and everybody has had a bad year this year, that's usually the thing that picks the year up. And it's like, wow, that's brutal. And so this season of Advent, I was annoyed that I didn't get to go to the gym or go to jiu-jitsu or whatever like I wanted to. What a first world problem to have, you know. But now my family and time with my family is like getting taken away from me. And I didn't expect that to be something that could happen. I forgot that that wasn't off the table.
Yeah.
So now it's like, Jesus, how can I wait? And how can I daily have you in mind where I can walk through a storm where the wind and the rain howls and blows in my face, and I understand that the storm will end. And I don't lose hope.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good way to wrap this up, huh?
Yeah. So if you're listening, we hope and pray that the Lord spoke to you and that you can take away something deep that you can go and spend time with the Lord with and really ponder. And I know I will be. Like, I just did not realize that I was affected this much by the pandemic. I was just always like, whatever. Like, we'll get through it. But it actually has been so hard.
Yeah.
And yeah, just praying that you get your hands on something really good, like a good Advent liturgical, devotional, whatever. And just, if you can't get your hands on a devotion, just devote yourself to prayer every day and just devote yourself to knowing the Lord every day a little more.
And also, you know, in light of that too, like literally just before we started the podcast, we were talking about, we want this platform to inspire and teach and, you know, be something that people can get excited about and look forward to, that it would be informative, and hopefully you can pull away valuable things from this podcast. But then there's another thing too. We want this podcast to be very, you know, homely. We want it to feel like a refuge, and we want people to feel just intimate and vulnerable,
Like our friends.
Like as if you're sitting in the living room with us right now and we're all just, you know, sitting around this coffee table and just
crying and drinking tea.
Crying and drinking tea and just, you know, being at home with one another. So if you're able to listen to this and you follow us on social media, you know, let's connect again. Let's reach out to one another and, you know, let's talk and like, let's lock arms with each other again so that, you know, we can, like, whether it's in person or, you know, online or through text message or even writing letters, let's have community again.
Yeah.
Because in such a season of separation, you know, this season of Advent, we should all connect again.
Yeah.
So, anything else you want to say, babe?
Nope.
All right. Well,
Thanks for listening.
thank you for listening. We love you guys. We'll see you again soon.